The revel now gradually broke up. The old farmers gathered together their families in their wagons and were heard for some time rattling along the hollow roads and over the distant hills. Some of the damsels mounted on pillions behind their favorite swains, and their light-hearted laughter, mingling with the clatter of hoofs, echoed along the silent woodlands, sounding fainter and fainter until they gradually died away. And the late scene of noise and frolic was all silent and deserted. Ichabod only lingered behind, according to the custom of country lovers, to have a tete-a-tete with the heiress, fully convinced that he was now on the high road to success. What passed at this interview, I will not pretend to say, for in fact, I do not know. Something, however, I fear me must have gone wrong, for he certainly sallied forth, after no very great interval, with an air quite desolate and chapfallen. Ichabod went straight to the stable and roused his steed, Gunpowder, from the comfortable quarters in which he was sleeping soundly, dreaming of mountains of corn and oats and whole valleys of timothy and clover. It was the very witching time of night that Ichabod, heavy-hearted and crestfallen, pursued his travels homewards, along the sides of the lofty hills which rise above Tarrytown and which he had traversed so cheerily in the afternoon. The hour was as dismal as himself. Far below him, the Tappan Zee spread its dusky and indistinct waste of waters, with here and there the tall mast of a sloop riding quietly at anchor under the land. In the dead hush of midnight, he could even hear the barking of the watchdog from the opposite shore of the Hudson. But it was so vague and faint as only to give an idea of his distance from this faithful companion of man. All the stories of ghosts and goblins that he had heard in the afternoon now came crowding upon his recollection. The night grew darker and darker. The stars seemed to sink deeper into the sky, and driving clouds occasionally hid them from his sight. He was approaching the very place where many of the scenes of the ghost stories had been laid. He whistled into the air to calm himself. And the wind seemed to answer. It even startled Gunpowder, and he moved faster down the path for a moment, but they came to a stop when they heard a groaning noise.
Ichabod! 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 Ichabod!
But it was only the croaking of frogs in the river. His heart began to thump. He gathered all his resolution, gave his horse half a score of kicks in the ribs, and attempted to dash briskly ahead, but instead of starting forward, the old animal made no movement at all. Ichabod looked up, and in the dark shadow of the grove on the margin of the brook, he beheld something huge, misshapen and towering. It stirred not, but seemed gathered up in the gloom like some gigantic monster ready to spring upon the traveler. While summoning up a show of courage, he demanded in stammering accents, "Who are you?" But there was no answer. Ichabod tried again. "Who are you?" Still no answer. Once more he cudgeled the sides of the inflexible Gunpowder, and shutting his eyes, broke forth with involuntary fervor into a psalm tune.
I know that he is watching me when I am all alone. I know that he is watching me.
On mounting a rising ground which brought the figure of his fellow traveler in relief against the sky, Ichabod was horror-struck on perceiving that he was headless. But his horror was still more increased on observing that the head which should have rested on his shoulders was carried before him on the pommel of his saddle. Now, as if Gunpowder saw and understood, he darted ahead, almost throwing Ichabod off his back. Away then they dashed, with the horsemen just behind, stones flying and sparks flashing at every bound. Ichabod's flimsy garments fluttered in the air, and he stretched his long, lank body away over the horse's head in the eagerness of his flight. They had now reached the road which turns off to Sleepy Hollow, but Gunpowder, who seemed possessed with a demon, instead of keeping up it, made an opposite turn and plunged headlong downhill to the left.
Oh, Indian, no, nothing can harm you. We're not safe at home. Either my trail, I cannot fail. I must go further. I've got to prevail.
They raced down the road, past the church and graveyard, where he beheld the ghostly apparitions of the children that had gone missing. Then, through a sandy hollow shaded by trees, where each branch hung specters, necks broken, arms hanging dead at their sides, yet still able to laugh maniacally at Ichabod as he sped past. As he cleared the trees, he could see Raven Rock, where the woman in white stood as if greeting him to the afterlife. But this is where Ichabod had a moment of hope, for he knew he was nearing the bridge famous in the goblin story where just across it lies safety.
The beating of my heart's the only sound I hear, and I can hardly move, for I can feel the fear. There's no one out here, and no one to hear you yell. The demon right behind is racing me to hell, is racing me to hell, is racing me. I know that he is watching me when I am on my own. I know that he is watching me, I'm all alone.
The bridge where Rombone's ghostly competitor had disappeared was at hand. If I can but reach that bridge, thought Ichabod, I am safe. Just then he heard the black steed panting and blowing close behind him, close enough that he felt his hot breath on his neck. Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge. He thundered over the resounding planks. Ichabod cast a look behind to see if his pursuer should vanish according to rule. Just then, he saw the goblin rising up in his stirrups, and in the very act of hurling his head at him. Ichabod endeavored to dodge the horrible missile, but too late. It encountered his cranium with a tremendous crash. It was tumbled headlong into the dust, and Gunpowder and the goblin rider passed by like a whirlwind.